Welcome back, Dolphins fans. This is your home for everything Miami Dolphins. And today we've got a hot topic. Week 3 preseason winners and losers. The preseason is officially in the books. And guess what? From now on, it's all about the regular season grind and the crucial roster cutdown news. But before we jump ahead, we need to talk about the biggest standouts from Saturday night's showdown against Jacksonville. Now, before we dive into the latest news, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and don't forget to turn on the bell icon so you never miss a Dolphins update. We're dropping the best coverage for fans like you, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. All right, let's move on to the big story. First up, the biggest winner of the night, Malik Washington. If you're a Dolphins fan, you need to keep your eye on this guy. The second-year wide receiver out of Virginia has been nothing short of impressive. Last year, he flashed his potential, not just during training camp and preseason, but even in regular season moments. Remember that 20-yard rushing touchdown against the Rams on Monday Night Football? That was Malik putting the NFL on notice. Add in his contributions on special teams with kick and punt returns, and you can see why the coaching staff loves him. Coming into this year, he was projected as the WR3 on the roster, the primary slot receiver and gadget weapon. And this game just confirmed that role. Against Jacksonville, Malik had 3 catches for 41 yards, including a 25-yard touchdown that had fans buzzing. The play, a perfect example of what he brings to this offense. Picture this. Tua runs a naked bootleg, has a defender in his face, and still finds Malik crossing the formation 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. Malik catches it in stride, shakes a linebacker so clean the guy didn't even get within 3 feet, and then accelerates upfield behind some great blocking for the score. And this isn't just a one-game thing. Go back to week 1 against the Bears. Malik was heavily involved. On just 7 snaps, he had 3 catches and an end around, proving he's going to be a featured part of this attack. He's building real chemistry with Tua, too. Before that touchdown against Jacksonville, the Dolphins faced a 4th and 6. The Jags brought pressure. Tua trusted Malik, and he delivered a tough 7-yard slant to move the chains. That's the kind of reliability you want in a playmaker. Malik Washington isn't just fighting for a roster spot, he's carving out a real role in this Dolphins offense. And if he keeps this up, defensive coordinators around the league better take notice. Let's keep this momentum going because the next big winner absolutely deserves the spotlight. And that's Chop Robinson. Dolphins fans, if you thought our defense was scary last year, buckle up because this pass rush is shaping up to be downright nightmarish for opposing quarterbacks. I'm talking about a group that can completely take over games. Chop Robinson, the second-year edge rusher out of Penn State, is at the center of it all. This guy wasted no time making his presence felt against Jacksonville. First play of the game, and the Dolphins roll out the NASCAR package, the Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb screaming off the edges, with Chop lined up over the interior offensive line. The result? Chaos. Zach Sealer and the other big guys drew all the attention, and Chop saw daylight. His burst through the gap was unreal straight to the quarterback in what felt like a blink. Nearly got the sack on the very first snap, and it didn't stop there. Robinson kept applying pressure, collapsing the pocket, and forcing the Jags to adjust. This is exactly what Miami envisioned when they invested in this defensive front: relentless speed, versatility, and guys who can wreck a play before it even develops. Let's not forget, from Week 8 to Week 18 last season, Chop ranked as a top 5 pass rusher in the NFL based on advanced metrics of win rate, pressure percentage, puff grades, you name it. That's elite company. If the secondary can hold its own this year, this Dolphins defense has a real shot at being one of the most dominant units in football. Chop Robinson looks ready to take that next leap, and when you combine him with Phillips, Chubb, and Wilkins in those packages, it's going to be a nightmare for offensive coordinators every single Sunday. Now, let's switch it up and talk offense for a second, because another name popped in a big way: Taj Washington. Yes, another Washington. And this guy just keeps stacking wins in the preseason. For the second game in a row, he stood out, making big catches and moving the chains when the Dolphins needed it. Coming into camp, Taj wasn't a lock for the final 53-man roster, far from it. But after these performances, he's not just on the roster. He's earned a real role. That's how you make the most of your opportunities. Bottom line, between Malik and Taj Washington lighting it up on offense, and Chop Robinson anchoring a pass rush that could be the best in football, this Dolphins team is loaded with talent. And the scary part? They're just getting started. Let's talk about one of the most competitive position battles on the roster, wide receiver depth. Coming into the preseason, the fight for that fifth wide receiver spot was intense. Taj Washington, D.S. Ridge, and a handful of UDFAs were all in the mix. But here's the thing, the wide receiver room has been so strong this preseason that Miami might not stop at 5. In fact, it's looking like the Dolphins will keep 6 receivers. And honestly, the picture is starting to clear up. The big four, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Malik Washington, and Braxton Berrios, are obvious locks. After them, D.S. Ridge has made a strong case for WR5. Against Jacksonville, he bounced back from some early drops with a clutch 21-yard reception, showing his ability to make big plays when it matters. Then there's Taj Washington, who continues to impress in every opportunity. Working with the second-team offense, he hauled in 4 catches for 30 yards, once again showing versatility in a role very similar to Malik Washington's. What stands out about Taj isn't just his production, it's the way he moves. He looks like a legitimate NFL receiver. He's quick, polished, and clearly understands the system. At this point, I'd call him a lock for the 53-man roster. Will he be active every week? That's harder to predict. But if Malik ever misses time, Taj slides in seamlessly, and defenses might not even notice the switch because both guys share that same last name and similar skill set. Now, let's flip it back to the defensive side, because we have to highlight another big winner, Jordan Phillips. This guy is a 5th-round pick out of Maryland, and let me tell you, he looks like a steal. Chris Grier has taken his fair share of criticism, and honestly, a lot of it has been deserved over the years. But if this draft class pans out the way it's trending, it could go down as one of his best. Jordan Phillips has been flat-out dominant in camp and the preseason. The strength in his lower and upper body is just different. There was a play where Jacksonville ran a stretch zone to the right, and Phillips absolutely manhandled the right guard, shoving him backward and blowing up the play. That allowed Bradley Chubb to crash down from the weak side and make the tackle for no gain. Later, Phillips drove the center so far back into the pocket that the lineman had no choice but to put his hand in Phillips's face mask, 10-yard penalty, thanks to pure power. This guy is going to be a problem in the rotation. He's currently projected as defensive lineman number 4, but the upside is real. Honestly, he's flashing the same kind of potential as Kenneth Grant, which says a lot about the quality of this defensive front. If Phillips continues this trajectory, Miami might have found another building block for the future in the 5th round, no less. Let's talk about one of the most competitive position battles on the roster, wide receiver depth. Coming into the preseason, the fight for that 5th wide receiver spot was intense. Taj Washington, D.S. Ridge, and a handful of UDFAs were all in the mix. But here's the thing, the wide receiver room has been so strong this preseason that Miami might not stop at 5. In fact, it's looking like the Dolphins will keep 6 receivers. And honestly, the picture is starting to clear up. The big four, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Malik Washington, and Braxton Berrios, are obvious locks. After them, D.S. Ridge has made a strong case for WR5. Against Jacksonville, he bounced back from some early drops with a clutch 21-yard reception, showing his ability to make big plays when it matters. Then there's Taj Washington, who continues to impress in every opportunity. Working with the second-team offense, he hauled in 4 catches for 30 yards, once again showing versatility in a role very similar to Malik Washington's. What stands out about Taj isn't just his production, it's the way he moves. He looks like a legitimate NFL receiver. He's quick, polished, and clearly understands the system. At this point, I'd call him a lock for the 53-man roster. Will he be active every week? That's harder to predict. But if Malik ever misses time, Taj slides in seamlessly, and defenses might not even notice the switch because both guys share that same last name and similar skill set. Now, let's flip it back to the defensive side because we have to highlight another big winner, Jordan Phillips. This guy is a fifth-round pick out of Maryland, and let me tell you, he looks like a steal. Chris Grier has taken his fair share of criticism, and honestly, a lot of it has been deserved over the years. But if this draft class pans out the way it's trending, it could go down as one of his best. Jordan Phillips has been flat-out dominant in camp and the preseason. The strength in his lower and upper body is just different. There was a play where Jacksonville ran a stretch zone to the right, and Phillips absolutely manhandled the right guard, shoving him backward and blowing up the play. That allowed Bradley Chubb to crash down from the weak side and make the tackle for no gain. Later, Phillips drove the center so far back into the pocket that the lineman had no choice but to put his hand in Phillips's face mask, 10-yard penalty, thanks to pure power. This guy is going to be a problem in the rotation. He's currently projected as defensive lineman number 4, but the upside is real. Honestly, he's flashing the same kind of potential as Kenneth Grant, which says a lot about the quality of this defensive front. If Phillips continues this trajectory, Miami might have found another building block for the future in the 5th round, no less. If you've been paying attention, you know we've talked about some impressive names already, but the last rookie we need to highlight is Ollie Garden. And Dolphins fans, this kid is making waves. Originally a 6th-round pick out of Oklahoma State, Garden came into camp as a depth piece. Fast forward 3 preseason games, and he's climbed the ladder in a big way. With Jalen Wright sidelined due to injury and Devin Achane dealing with a calf issue, Garden got RB1 duties against Jacksonville, and he absolutely delivered. Mike McDaniel confirmed that Achane hasn't had any setbacks and should be ready for Week 1 against the Colts, which is great news. But in the meantime, Garden has done more than just fill in. He's earned a serious role. When you watch Ollie Garden run, one thing stands out: physicality. At 6'2", 228 pounds, he brings a bruising style that perfectly complements the finesse and speed of Devin Achane. Garden looks comfortable pounding the rock between the tackles, finishing runs with authority, and wearing down defenses. That's a dimension Miami hasn't had in a while, and it could make this offense even harder to defend. And don't forget about pass protection, his biggest question mark early in the preseason. Against Jacksonville, Garden showed significant improvement in that area, holding his ground when the Dolphins asked him to protect Tua. That's huge for a young back. Combine that with his projected role as the goal line and short yardage hammer, especially now that Alexander Mattison is out for the year. And it's clear why Garden is rocketing up the depth chart. Honestly, if you're asking me who the biggest winner of the entire preseason is, it's Ollie Garden. He started as RB4, and now he's sitting comfortably as RB2 heading into Week 1. No need for a Brian Robinson Jr. trade. Miami didn't just save draft capital, they found a legit contributor in the 6th round. That's the kind of value that can change a team's depth and balance in a big way. So let's settle this in the comments. Who do you think was the biggest winner of the entire preseason? Malik Washington, Chop Robinson, Taj Washington, Jordan Phillips, or Ollie Garden? Let me know what you think, because this roster is shaping up to be one of the deepest we've seen in years. Now, let's flip to the other side and talk about the biggest losers from the preseason finale. And unfortunately, first on that list is Pharaoh Brown. This isn't the first time Brown's name has come up on the wrong side of these conversations. Honestly, at this point, his roster spot feels very shaky. Yes, he played snaps with the first-team offense against Jacksonville, which might suggest he has a slight edge over Tanner Conner for depth chart purposes. But the reality is clear. Julian Hill and Darren Waller are your top 2 tight ends, and Brown hasn't done nearly enough to secure a strong role. The main issue? Execution. There was one play in the second drive with the starters that really stood out, and not in a good way. Miami ran an under-center play action, with James Daniels pulling across the formation to pick up the edge rusher after Brown gave him a chip. That was the design. Brown's job was simple. Chip, release to the flat for a potential checkdown. Instead, he locks onto the defender as if it's a standard block. Daniels adjusts and looks for another assignment. And then Brown releases his man. What happens next? Sack on Tua. A basic mental lapse that killed the play. And it didn't end there. On Miami's two-point attempt after the touchdown, they dialed up a pass to Brown in the flat. He catches it. Sure, but not before bobbling it and barely dragging his feet in bounds. Plays like that tell the story. He's not a reliable pass catcher. And if blocking is supposed to be his strength, he hasn't dominated in that area either. Bottom line, Pharaoh Brown was signed to be a physical, dependable blocker who could give you something in the passing game when needed. So far, he's done neither at the level Miami needs. Does he survive the final cutdown? Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the Dolphins moved on. Next up on the losers list is Braden Daniels. And this one is tough because, for much of the preseason, Daniels has been one of the brighter spots on the Dolphins' second unit offensive line. But in the final preseason game, things unraveled. And unfortunately, it came at the worst possible time. Daniels stepped in at left guard with the second team and had a rough sequence that you just can't afford when you're fighting for a roster spot. First, he gets beaten clean and gives up a sack, a momentum killer for the offense. Then, on the very next snap, he commits a false start. Back-to-back mistakes like that are brutal, especially when every rep is being evaluated. Could he still make the 53-man roster? Possibly. But after that performance, it's far from a guarantee. If the Dolphins were on the fence before, this game might have pushed him closer to the bubble. Now let's talk about DC&D Jr., commonly referred to as Oicy Jr. in reports. This is another tough one because he's had some really good moments in camp and the preseason. Remember that second preseason game? 6 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown. He looked like a real difference maker. But fast forward to the finale against Jacksonville, and he just couldn't replicate that success. 3 catches for 19 yards on 3 targets. The production wasn't terrible given the limited opportunities, and he even made a nice leaping grab along the sideline on an off-target throw. So why is he on the loser list? Simple. Roster math. D didn't do enough to separate himself, and other guys did. D. Eskridge continues to lock down his spot on the 53-man roster, and Taj Washington turned in another strong showing, landing on our winners list earlier. That leaves D. Jr. on the outside looking in. He's likely sitting as WR7 in this projection, and with Miami expected to keep 6 receivers, that's a tough spot. The reality of the NFL is brutal. Sometimes it's not about how well you play individually, but whether you outshine the competition. D. Jr. didn't, and now he's in serious danger of not making the team. Unfortunately, the reality for D. Jr. is that the numbers just don't work in his favor. The Dolphins aren't keeping 7 wide receivers, and with the way the depth chart is shaping up, he's likely the odd man out. Honestly, I doubt he even makes it to the practice squad. There's a good chance another team claims him off waivers. Tough break for a guy who flashed so much potential earlier in the preseason. Next on the list is Grayson Murphy. This one's a little different because Murphy didn't necessarily play badly. He just didn't stand out when it mattered most. After recording a sack in each of the first 2 preseason games, expectations were high for the finale. Instead, he was almost invisible. And in a position group as competitive as edge rusher, that matters. Look at the depth chart. Judon, Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, and Chop Robinson are all locks. That probably leaves just one more spot for an edge rusher. Murphy's competing with Quinn Bell, Mo Kamara, and Derek McClendon for that last spot. If he had dominated this final game, he could have locked it down. Now, it's a toss-up. He still has a shot, but the door isn't nearly as open as it could have been. And finally, the last loser isn't a player, it's an entire group. The offensive line. Yes, Braden Daniels already made the list individually, but as a whole, this unit struggled against Jacksonville. The Dolphins allowed 6 sacks, 2 each for Tua, Skylar Thompson, and James Blackman. The run game was fine, averaging 4.4 yards per carry, but the pass protection was shaky, especially early. Here's the bigger issue: depth. Miami's starting five, Austin Jackson, James Daniels, Aaron Brewer, Jonah Savina, and Patrick Paul has potential. But if any of those guys go down with a long-term injury, this team is in trouble. The drop-off is steep, and today's performance proved it. For a team with playoff aspirations, offensive line depth remains one of the top concerns heading into the regular season. So there you have it, the biggest losers from the preseason finale. Some of these guys will survive cutdown day, some won't, and a few could land on the practice squad. But one thing is certain: the next 48 hours will be crucial as Miami trims down to the official 53-man roster.